meaningfully to the society. For this session, we have Sir, who is going to speak in the alignment of the same theme. So you're comfortable with this mic or that?
Namaste, everyone. My talk is going to be different in character and obviously in content. And after listening to Professor Saluja, Acharya Saluja, if I can call him, to speak after him, could be a kind of ordeal, punishment, because he was speaking from his lived experience and from a long experience of having delved into the essence of Indian Bharatiya Jnana Parampara. Mine would be more of an academic nature, of a different kind. So I think towards the end, and also when Professor Kushal Tiwari was introducing the topic, and when later Professor Saluja, towards the conclusion of his talk, there's one thing common I noticed, and that is the two divergent educational systems in our time right now. One, because of perhaps some kind of political impetus or political inspiration, we don't know what it is. There are these mushrooming gurukuls. They call themselves gurukuls, which in essence they may not be gurukuls. And then an educational setup like this one, which is largely Western university education system, two divergent streams. Can there be any meeting point between the two? Or which of the two is more relevant? Is the ancient Gurukul system? In the back, if there are some people talking, boys, hello. I'm talking to you, yes, gentlemen, you too. Your talk is disturbing me here. So either, either move out, you can discuss whatever you have to discuss, or if you have to stay here, please bear with me for 30, 40 minutes. So how much are those ancient gurukuls? Some of them, a few of them, maybe a handful, less than half a dozen, might still be working, might be working. Are they relevant in this global, this what we call globalized world or globals? So my talk here is all about this. So when in 2020, prior to 2020, when this exercise of NEP began and people started talking about it, theorizing about it, Professor Saluja was one of the members who created, envisaged NEP. So I thought I would go back to the ancient times to see and try to understand. I'm as much of a student as maybe Saluja sir's youngest student, earliest student. So what education means or meant, sorry, for those people in ancient times. One, jnana or shiksha, what it meant, that is one. Then what structure, what form that education had, in what form it was transmitted, transformed, or practiced, or exercised. Then the history of those educational institutions. A bit of that was there in Professor Saluja's talk also about ashrams. And then from ashrams, which were households, in fact, of the household of an acharya, from there to the great grand universities, Vishwavidyalaya, like Takshashila, Western people call it Takshashila and Nalanda. And then when Nalanda was there, then India was actually literally a Vishwaguru. And it's not to be some pundit saying this. This is what William Dalrymple in his latest book announces by reference to Zhuangzhang Wenzhang. He announces that. I'll make a reference to that. Then what, according to my brief, or limited understanding, what kind of base we can create? We can't throw these modern education institutions out of the system. They can't be thrown out, and we can't immediately go back to that system which existed 1,500 years ago. We cannot recreate Takshila. We cannot recreate Nalanda in a day, right? So what best? What next best? So the meaning of education, what was that? And I quote Hartmut Scharf here, a German scholar. Germans are wonderful people, be it scholarship or car making. Those of you who drive German things, they know it. So Hartmut, and we all know about Max Muller, of course. Yes. So Hartmut Scharf, and he has done a long study, a very investigative study about education. So this is how he says education functioned in ancient India, what it meant. So education, and I'm quoting Hartmut Scharf here, it meant handing down from one generation to the next the cultural heritage of previous generations, including any innovations they may have made. So two things here. One is the process and the other is the substance. So what is the substance? The substance thing that comes up here in this definition of education by Hartmut Scharf, and of course he's not defining education, he only goes back to classical ancient Indian texts and tries to find out things from there. So one, cultural information, cultural knowledge, cultural heritage, that's the substance, one. And second, transmission, transferring, two things. So that is what education meant in that ancient India. One, what was the substance, the cultural heritage, and also the process. So these two things together constitute education, or the meaning of education, or constituted the meaning of education for those people. Then, when was that? And that was the time when the Vedic society, according to this scholar's study, had just started becoming a settled society, agrarian society, agricultural society, after a long period of nomadism. Right, so that is that time of early settlements there, when this kind of education existed. And then he says, therefore, this phrase he uses, that education had rural ethics. They practiced rural ethics. We really don't know what rural ethics are, and nor does the scholar explain here. And the next thing, that education was oral, completely oral. And so much so that even after scripting was, it had come to be practiced, there was a very express resentment, or express, in a way, prohibition, or in a way, resistance to scripting. And for that, this scholar quotes Sayana, the ancient rishi, and this is what he says in his introduction to the commentary of Rig Veda. And this is Sayana speaking. The text, and I'm quoting Sayana through Scharf. The text of the Veda is to be learned by the method of learning it from the lips of the teacher and not from a manuscript. So these are the things that come up about the early education system in India. First, it was cultural heritage and transmission, transferring of that cultural heritage. Vocations were included here. Not that it was just a kind of cultural knowledge or cultural information, cultural practices, the ritualistic practices that we see in the Veda. I wish Saluja Sahib had been here, so he would, tell us what that meant. Right. So, process and rural ethic and oral method. These are the things here, this combination. So, two things come up here, finally. Learning of that cultural heritage, transferring that cultural heritage along with the vocations. that were in vogue at the time, which primarily were agriculture and, of course, fighting. Military science, for example, was one of the subjects that was taught. That is one thing. Now, about the educational institutions, going back to the same time, Professor Saluja is of the view by his study that Gurukul is the word Gurukul, he doesn't find in ancient texts, and we don't know. So, and going with that, where did our educational institutions start in India, in ancient India, ancient Bharat? They started in the household, right? And so that was the first school, and even today, the household, the family is the first school for the child, right? Like whatever I see you doing, probably that reflects what you have learned at your first school and your second school, and this, of course, is your third school. So this started there. Ashrama. So there is, there is this scholar, Majumdar, Nogendranath. He talks about ashrama as the culmination of, as the realization of a tendency which was non-Brahmanic, non-Vedic, and that was a Shramanic tendency. Now he talks about two, opposite or divergent tendencies. One Shramanic tendency, the other Brahmanic tendency. Brahmanic here in our time, in after the Anglicanization of our educational system, the word Brahmanic comes for a lot of flack and derision, but it doesn't mean anything of that kind in that system. It's all about rituals there, right? That is what the word means. So Shrama here, the word, so going back to the root of the word Shrama, we're talking of ashrama here. Dusun, all of you know about Dusun if you have a little bit about ancient cultural knowledge system. So he, in Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, he goes to the root of the word ashrama and shrama. So what is the root? Root, of course, is a shrama. And the meaning, I think all of us know the meaning of the word shrama, and that is to exert oneself. Exert oneself. That is was a requirement. That was the base of every ashrama. The teacher, the guru, the master, the kulapati of the acharya kula or ashram, and the scholars, and everyone else had to contribute by way of shrama, which could be physical, which was physical, and mental both. It wasn't like these educational institutions. How many of these educational institutions, ours, have any kind of value added to physical shrama? Nothing. That was comprehensive. So Dusan, he talks of two things here, so ashram could mean two things simultaneously or alternatively. And I'm quoting Dusan here. A place where austerities are performed, a hermitage, and two, second meaning, simultaneous or alternative, the action of performing such austerities. It's a kind of tapas. It's a kind of tapa. For just a while ago, in Principal's chamber, I was telling him about his swadhyaya. That is also a kind of tapa. So they were ingredients of the hermitages, which we call ashrams, and they were based on, they grew from the Shramanic tendency, which scholars say, later on, the Brahmanic system also adopted that and adapted that. So that is the first stage. And then comes the next stage. What happened to those ashramas? They grew into kulas. Now, Professor Saluja was using the word acharya kula. Acharya is also a guru. So there is not much of a conflict of interest between the two words, acharya kula, guru kula. Both the words mean the same thing. So it begins with ashrama, and then they grow into gurukula. And the moment it becomes a kula, it becomes a family, and a large family. in which there were scholars. And by that time, what had happened, it had become mandatory for people to spend a certain number of years in an educational institution, Acharya Kulam or Guru Kulam. So, and the period varied. I mean, if you go into that ashrama system, 25, 25, 25, 25, we don't think of that. What is this creature doing there? Lovely. Right. So, how many years? We would say 25 years. No, but that was not the case. In fact, the number varied from 8 years to 12 years to 18 years to 20 years to 25 years. Not necessarily 25 years. 25 years is the maximum, depending on what a student, what a learner wanted to learn. Right, it was not mandatory for every learner to learn everything. Right, so depending on that, that is what happens here. Now, again, I'm referring to Nagendranath Majumdar. It's a beautiful book titled History of Education in Ancient India, published way back in 1932. There was no charge in 1932 like this IKS, etc. No political drive. So this could be treated as a very honest study. So he refers to a Buddhist text, Lalita Vistara Sutra. And in that Lalita Vistara Sutra, he refers to the case of Buddha as a student while he was traveling, going around in search of enlightenment, in search of jnana. And 6th century before Common Era, BCE, that is the time. So he attended a school, and I'm quoting from Nagendranath. So Buddha, at the time of Buddha, who, following the usual custom of the world, went to the writing school to practice well all figures, writings, calculations, and other things. So, and other rudimentary arts of reading, writing, arithmetics, etc., etc. And this was the primary school, elementary school, which Buddha attended. And he studied these many things. Already we see the development from where to where, from the household to ashrama, to Acharya Kulam, to this kind of elementary schools. And by the way, another finding of Majumdar in 1932 was that the monitorial system of education, which we know of, we think of a monitor in a class, a senior student minds the class, the teacher's telling, mind the class in my absence, or teach the class in my absence. This monitorial system started back then, around 6th century BCE or earlier. By the time Buddha was studying there, the system was very much thriving, so it must have started earlier. And his finding also tells us that the British borrowed that monitorial system from us and took it back to England. So it didn't come from them to us, but in fact, this monitorial system, if the system went from here to their people. So this is about elementary education. Now, another reference to Jataka tales to talk about how these schools, schools developed, grew, and then the growth and development of such wonderful institutions like Takshashila, Vishwavidyalaya, Nalanda, Vishwavidyalaya. So Jataka tales, Jataka stories, and other resources, many scholars refer to them. They came through a process of conglomerations of Acharya Kulam. This is the next stage in the development of education learning in India. So what begins to happen, and by the way, some people, some scholars, Western criticism, Western thinkers believe that Vishwavidyalayas or universities in India were started by the influence of Buddhist monasteries of mathas. But scholars like Majumdar and others, they sort of rebut this argument, they reject this argument, and they refer to such cases like Panini, who lived in the 6th and the 5th century, again, BCE. So Panini, in his work, talks about a group of institutions that were functioning simultaneously at Takshashila. So you can imagine, you are students of Delhi University, faculty of Delhi University. I come from Allahabad University. Mine is also a similar university. We have constituent colleges there, 8, 12, and all of them together and us on the main campus constitute the university, like you people. Your Shamlal College and Venkateshwara there, and Miranda or Ramjas in the elite portion part of Delhi, or elite section or elite part of Delhi, whatever, I don't know. You constitute what you call Delhi University. So that was the kind of shape which Panini refers to. So groups of institutions, and every kula, every gurukul, every acharya kul was headed by an expert in a particular branch of study, right? So there must have been some kind of understanding among all of those institutions. So students moved from one specialized field to the next, as long as the quest, the jigyasa, the need of that student was fulfilled. That continued happening. There was nothing like a mandatory course. A student would study it at one acharya-kul, move to the next if he felt the need to, otherwise wouldn't. Well, that is what he refers to. Now, how did Vishwavidyalaya before such as Nalanda, etc., came up? They were in some form, again, Majumdar talks about parishads. I remember Professor Saluja's talk also mentioned parishads here. And this is what he says, that, and he refers to early Upanishads, and he says the parishads, now I'm quoting Majumdar now, parishads that were the Vedic counterparts to the residential universities of Europe. These are his words, 1932. Parishads were the Indian residential counterparts of universities in Europe. And then what was taught there? A number of things. And then he refers to, I'm referring to the second Brahmana of the 6th Adhyaya of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That's an illustrative instance of how admissions to this kind of universities happened there. So that is this story of Shwetaketu, the son of Uddalaka Aruni of Gautama clan. He faced a parishad at Panchala. And then he failed the entrance test, if we can call it this entrance test. And he was taught by his own father. So, by implication, his father also failed the test. The result was that both the father and the son studied, under the aegis of Parishad or Samiti kind of universities. They studied together. What they studied is not important, but they studied. He also used the word Samiti, Professor Saluja, I remember. Now, this is interesting. The same story of Ashwetaketu appears in Brihadaranyaka and in Chandogya. The only difference in the story is the use of the word. In one, and I'm reading, Shwetaketu va aruneya panchalam parishad majagam. Parishad. He went to Parishad. Shwetaketu, the son of Aruni. That is, this is from Brihadaranyaka. The word used here is Parishad. And then we go to Chandogya, where it begins, the story begins, Shwetaketur Haruneya Panchalam Samiti Meyaya. Two words used in separate, different positions, but then telling the same story, and both mean the same thing. That is, a kind of assembly, a kind of association of scholars. Just imagine, what is your college? What is our university? Scholars, experts, professors, acharyas, and all of them together. And I don't need to tell all of you are seasoned and mature scholars that building doesn't make a university.
Sure.
Right. So where were those parishads and those samitis working, those groups of scholars functioning as universities? Majumdar calls them counterparts of Western residential universities. Where were they working? In the patronage of the king, of course, like Panchala. So the king is there. The king is the head of that samiti, right? Like your chancellor, for example, our chancellor. Who is our chancellor? The president of India. So in that manner. So this is the stage. What stage? Just the stage before the arrival of proper full-fledged universities. And then seminaring, like this kind of event. This is just a symposium, but a seminar is not far from, not very different from a symposium, nor is a conference. That also existed. And if one needs evidence, go to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and the sections 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And in particular, the 6th, the chapter 3, Adhyaya 3, a long series of debates. So many scholars interrogating. That was a kind of a conferencing there, and answering every series of questions from every seasoned scholar is Yajnavalkya there. Right? That is, if you read these chapters, you see that that looks very much like our contemporary conferences. That is a stage in the development. Now, one of the things that all of these institutions had, right from the ashrama, not ostensibly mentioned, explicitly stated, up to the universities. And what was that? The base in what was called Dharma, right? It was and Dharma, not religion, for God's sake. Don't translate Dharma as religion. It never was, it never is. We are so sensitive to the word religion that this clarification needs to be made every time, because we have become very intolerant in our time everywhere, all over the world. I'm not blaming Indians. I've seen in my childhood, I remember we were a better place. These divisions were not there as much as they are now, all kinds of. So that was the base. What was the base? Dharma. And this Majumdar, Hartmut Scharf refers to the case of Majjhima Nikaya. Again, then he refers to the case of Buddha while he was in search of his enlightenment. So like many Buddhists would say that, Veds or the Sanskrit texts were rejected by Buddhists. On the contrary, Majjhima Nikaya and other Buddhist texts have the opposite, contrary evidence. And this comes from Buddha's own life. He went to two Brahminic scholars, not Brahmin scholars, Brahminic scholars. One was Alara Kalama and the other was Udaka Ramaputta. The names have, of course, been rendered in Prakrit that was being practiced by the Buddhists. And why did he go there? These are Buddha's words as quoted in Majjhima Nikaya, translated into English. Well, teach me, Alara Acharya Kalama or Ramaputta, teach me to follow the Brahma study in this doctrine and discipline. That is what he wanted to study, Brahma study. Brahma here means, of course, the Supreme, right? The shapeless Supreme, pervasive Supreme. That is what he wanted to learn, and from those Brahminic scholars. There wasn't a division in Buddha's mind. There was not a resistance in Buddha's mind. So that is what was happening at the time. And he was in search of this enlightenment. So there is this visible line of development from the household and from ashrama to acharyakul, gurukul, to monasteries and Vishwavidyalaya. This is how it grows from ashram to Vishwavidyalaya the fully grown Vishwavidyalaya, the largest at the time, of course, was Takshashila, though Nalanda was no less. If you read Xuanzang Wenzang's record, then you would hold your head in wonder that in India, and it was, of course, Wenzang was not an Indian. So when he writes about it, and Wenzang has been extensively quoted by William Dalrymple in his 2024 book. In the first 2 pages, your eyes will open. And he is not an Indian making this statement. Dalrymple, a British scholar, historian, and Xuanzang, a Chinese traveler. So that is the evidence. I wouldn't go to that part. Now, so there's a stage. How did it happen? Did the Acharya Kulas immediately transformed into universities? No, it didn't. It took them several centuries. Like, for example, Sahana Singh, I don't find that book very enlightening, but I did go to that. And I was looking for some supportive evidence. But this is what she says about Rishi Kanva. And everybody knows Rishi Kanva via Abhijnana Shakuntalam. So this is what she writes, that Kanva's hermitage, about an assemblage of numerous hermitages around the central one, presided by Rishi Kanva. And she actually calls this, quote, like a forest university with different departments teaching different subjects, but under the same administration, etc., etc. So this is how they were developing. And then, by the way, I have quoted here in my paper. This is actually a paper. It's not a talk like Professor Saluja does. He's a very authentic scholar, spent all his life in study. I began as a westernized person. It's very lately that I've started moving into. Yeah, I was quoting from Dalrymple, and he quotes Xuanzang. And listen to this. And when I read this, my eyes did open wider than they actually are. They can physically open. Housed in the Vishwavidyalaya, and he's talking of Nalanda, quote, housed 10,000 monks and international scholars who, between them, studied the texts of the different schools of Buddhism, as well as the sacred Veda, logic, Sanskrit grammar, philosophy, medicine, metaphysics, divination, mathematics, astronomy, literature, and magic. This was in Nalanda. 10,000 monks, scholars, 10,000 plus. You can think of a proper university in function. That is what Xuanzang saw there. So these conglomerations then, there is a process, Agrahara villages are there, mutts are there, monasteries are there, and they grew. They had a mainstay. I had referred to that, Dharma. So what is Dharma? The moment we bring in the word secular, we begin to feel scared of words like Dharma, but Dharma didn't mean that. And those of us who know a little bit about the Indian system, we know that Dharma is one of the 4 Purusharthas. And in this series of from Dharma to Moksha, Dharma is the first. So everything has to be based on the concept, the idea of Dharma. And the definition, many definitions, one was cited by Professor Saluja, Dashakam Lakshanam, or Dashakam, 10 features of Dharma. He was citing an ancient sage. I'll come to that a little later. So what has our modern education system lost? It has lost that base in Dharma. Now, I'm skipping a big part here so that my point is not lost here. And Professor Saluja also made a reference to that. And I'm explaining that in detail. I have it in my talk written. In Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a Valli called Shiksha Valli, and a very important Valli. The last part, departing student. Just imagine when the student lived inside on the campus, if it could be called a campus ashrama or acharya kula or Vishwavidyalaya, he practiced his study of knowledge on the basis, on the foundation of Dharma. When he was departing, there used to be a kind of graduation ceremony, which we sometimes call convocation. So there is a very explicit prescription about what the departing students would be told to mandatorily follow once they went out into the society to practice what they had learned. So where does it begin? It begins with these words, this Satyam vad dharmam char swadhyayam ma pramada. And then it goes on. And then repetition, okay? Satya na pramaditavyam, dharma na pramaditavyam, kushalan na pramaditavyam, bhutya na pramaditavyam, swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pravaditam. These things you don't have to do. Don't shirk, don't avoid. Right? So that was the graduation ceremony or convocation speech of the Kuladhipati, Vice Chancellor, not Vice Chancellors of, well, I won't make a political statement. I'm also from a university. Right? So what kind of Kuladhipati or Kulapati they were, there is a special, somewhere else in, a big Sanskrit verse, there is a mention of the requirements, the eligibility for a Kulapati, which I won't read here because I still have to serve a few years at a university. And then giving, what could be, what is the need, what is the, what do we do out of our learning? One of the things that we have to do is to give. So how to give? So this is again in the same Valli, Shraddhaya Devam, Shraddhaya Devam, Ashraddhaya Adeyam, Shriya Deyam, Kriya Deyam, Dhiya Deyam, Samvida Deyam. Giving in this manner, without show, in total humility, etc., etc., and in full faith, giving to the society. And it's not about money alone. It's about giving whatever a person is eligible to give. So this is, this gives us a fair idea. And this is Taittiriya Upanishad, which is one of the earliest Upanishads among the first 13. Right, so it tells us what the base of that education was. This is what Dharma is. Satya, Swadhyaya, giving. And then in the same Valli comes this Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava. It's a part of the same Valli. Right, so if you read that, you'll be surprised. Our convocation speeches look nothing in comparison to that convocation speech. And Sahana has a word for this speech, and she calls it Snataka Dharma. So once you graduate Dharma, she would say. And then what kind of Vidya? What kind of knowledge? So many of our institutions has this motto and taken from Vishnu Purana. Yat karma yatana bandhai sa vidyaya vimuktaye. Such education which liberates us, liberates from ego, pride, right? The gentleman there felt hurt. I can tell by his, so anyway, one of the things, does this education liberate us? It doesn't. Am I liberated? I certainly am not. Professor Saluja, to a great extent, a liberated person. I'm not. He doesn't carry a phone. I have to carry the phone. He keeps away from gadgets, screen time, 0. Though he was using PPT, and I was surprised. Professor Saluja, who doesn't use a phone, uses a PPT, which I think is the need of the time. But anyway, so it liberates. What kind of education would liberate? Such as is based on dharmas. If Bharat or India or whatever, there's again a controversy about India or Bharat, etc. Two countries, India and Bharat, needless controversy, of course, unnecessary, fueled by our stupid politics. So if we have to regain, we can't go back in time. That's not the law of nature. The law of nature tells us to go ahead, move forward, always. So if we have to, I mean, like politics keeps on telling us we have to become the Vishwa Guru. There's only one way by doing that, and that is what we can do is to recreate the foundation in Dharma. And that is what Professor Saluja was also talking about. What is Dharma? So, Dhritihi, Kshama, Damo, Asteyam, Shocham, Indriya Nigraham, Dhir Vidyas, Satyam, Akrodho, Dashakam, Dharma Lakshanam. Naturally, this sage, Manu was writing this many centuries ago, millennium ago. We have to modify because Dharma also means change and modification according to circumstances and time. Anything that is frozen cannot be that. Modification is one of the rules, central rules of Dharma. So if our time requires, this time requires, the globalized world requires a modification here, it can be done. And this Dharma, again, cannot be translated as ethics. It's something more meaningful, the word Dharma. And then what kind of intelligence, intellect, which our institutions need to, in fact, inculcate in students. There is a reference there in Katha Upanishad. It's the same Upanishad where this beautiful child Nachiketa goes to Yama, the god of justice, for instruction. In the same Upanishad, later, intelligence, jnana, vijnana, is defined. And this is from the same, this is Shloka 6 from the third Valli of Katha Upanishad. Yastu vijnana vana bhavanti yuktena manasa sada tasye indrani vashyani sadashva iva sarathi. That is what intelligence is, to control the chariot of your mind, your mind, your horses, to control your intelligence, your buddhi teaches you to do that, just as a charioteer controls many horses, 3, 4, 5, as many horses there. And if we don't do this, then this is what happens. Dharma eva hadohanti dharmo rakshati rakshata. And then tasmat dharma, etc., etc. If this doesn't happen, then the harm that we see and feel the need to go back. And I won't spend much time here, but then I'll just share my experience with you people. A part of my life, I worked with as an associate professor at Vanastali Vidyapith. I left that university when I was going to the US for my full practice trend. And when I came back, I went to Central University in Sagar and then Allahabad University. I worked there and I saw how Panchamukhi Shiksha on the campus of that university had helped many lady students to become very successful professionals. All kinds of education is available there, from LLM to BTech. All sciences are there, but everything is founded on, and this is my thesis for today's talk. I said, bring back, recreate the base in Dharma. And that is what they are doing. Without using the word Dharma, they call it Panchamukhi Shiksha, 5-fold education. And the first in those mukhas, or 5-fold, is moral. You can call it Dharma. So wearing of khadi, time for meditation, girls doing horse riding, girls flying planes. By the way, Avani, one of our fighter plane, pilots, she graduated from the same Banasthali. So it's not that by creating that base of Dharma, you are taking your girls or ladies or students away from away from a modern education. In fact, it's a beautiful integration. So what I felt after thinking like this for a long time, and I think research associate of this project, you people are already doing this, going to different places. One, the institutions like Gurukul, you know, being to actual Gurukuls, in fact, and institutions like Banasali, modern institution, which follows that path in a way, study them, create, you know, a list of findings and see how it can be integrated within the system. Because I personally feel that maybe it doesn't look feasible or practical to go back to the same Gurukul or ashram of 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. We have to somehow, you know, bring those values into these institutions. We have to move forward in some way. There's much more here, but then because I know 1:30, another scholar speaker is waiting for you, I've already overshot my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I made it in English.
No, sir. I mean, your talk was, loaded with a lot of references. That's the most academic talk I've listened in ages, I've heard in ages. So I'll go back to those references for my own study and yeah. So I'll go back to those references, decode everything and put that into my document. Next in the line, we have Harish Swaminathan ji. He will be speaking about his own experiences since he has put his own son into Vedic school. So I think his talk is going to be very prominent in order to understand the sense of how this gurukuls and ashram structure is functioning. What are the things which we can take up, and what are the probably challenges also we'll be able to talk about it. So Harishji, are you online? Are you with us?
Yes, Namaste. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, unfortunately, my webcam seems to have some issue. Let me try it again.
Even if there is an issue, no problem. Like we can just go with your voice.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Can I start? I'll probably have to share my slides, I think.
Yes, you can start.
Are you able to see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're able to see? Okay, I'm not able to hear the voice from there that clearly as such.
Am I audible to you now?
Yes, now it's better. Okay, can I start then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Swasti Sarvebhyaha. My name is Harish Swaminathan, and I'm really glad to be part of this one-day online symposium organized by Shamlal College. I really thank Neha Sharma ji. She caught me on Twitter and she kind of wanted me to present my own interpretation and my own personal experience of how from a family which probably lost touch with the Adhyan of Veda for probably close to 2 generations, and how we were able to revive it in the current generation. So that's why my talk is termed as Journey to Veda, essentially talking about some of the facets of the Adhyanam of Veda as it happens in Tamil Nadu. So that's what I'm used to, and why I put my own son into it, and what are the reasons, and how do I see the Adhyanam itself in the coming years, and what are the prospects for people who have studied the Veda as such. So that's going to be my talk in general. So this is the agenda, very rough. So I'm pretty normal individual as such. So I actually feel privileged to be presenting here. I have done a few talks in certain places related to this. And again, this is just my way of putting it in the sense that why we chose Vedadhyanam and what are the differences between a traditional Gurukul or a Pathashala and the modern school education. What are the differences between them and why I chose this particular path for my own son? And how is the Adhyayam scenario in the current modern context? As I was joining, I think the previous speaker was mentioning that we really cannot go back 5,000 years, but we need to take the values in the current context. So I would like to touch base on how do we actually do the Adhyanam in the modern context and what are the future prospects as such. Okay. So with that, I just want to get into why Veda Adhyanam, right? What are the positive aspects of it, and in the current society, how is it actually viewed? There are many vakyas in the Veda which talks about how a particular individual has to function. Typically, these days, if you see, people say one thing, but their action seems to be very different as such. But the Veda is very clear that for an individual to succeed in life, his thought, speech, and action. So essentially, these are some lines that come very often in the Veda. Manasa dhyayati. He thinks something, he takes a sankalpa, he takes a resolution in his mind to do something. Vacha vadati. He explains the same, whatever he thought in his mind in terms of words, and karmana karoti. And he executes it according to that. So there is a total synchronization of thought, speech, and action for a person who has done the study of Veda and also able to explain to the larger society the values that is engrossed in the Veda assets. This is a very important aspect because what makes a complete human being is just not lip service, right? So we need to have a particular resolution, say it in words, and also execute it correctly. So this is one very important aspect that a Vedadhyayi possesses. And I'm very sure since this is engrossed in him, he will be able to make the society also lead in the same path. Second, it provides a lot of health in the sense that physical and mental aspects, right? So what exactly does this mean? So we are in a very strange situation at this point, I would say. If you really look at the vegetables, you look at the groceries that we consume, we want organic in everything these days. But if you look at the intelligence that we want, it is artificial intelligence. For intelligence, we tend to go towards artificial things, but for food, we are still organic. And this is where the Veda holds a very sacred place because it is an organic knowledge which has not got um, yes, there has been some reduction in the study of it, but still the values that it holds and the value it can offer to the society is largely unexplored at this point of time. And one such thing is both the physical and the mental aspect of it. So there is a very common vakyam that we find in the Dharma Shastram which says, Achara hinantu napunanti vedaha. What it means is a person who is devoid of achara, which essentially means how he conducts himself, even the Vedas cannot purify him. So that essentially means for studying something, you require both a mental and a physical aspect of it. A particular study of the Veda is very different from a school going student in many aspects. He has to forgo his parents for a long period of time, stay in a patashala under the supervision of a guru, eat very simple food. For example, a school going child could get ice creams and biscuits on a regular basis, which is very unheard of even in the current circumstances in the patashalas in Tamil Nadu. He has to obviously learn how to be an individual at a very young age. He is actually very independent because the parents are not with him even during the formative years as such. So the Adhyanam of Veda prepares one both physically. So how does it prepare physically? In a Pathashala, there are a lot of things that he has to do for his guru. Maybe go and take some flowers, collect the samit for all of his Anushtan, etc. and all that. So all of these things require some level of physical and mental health development as such. So this is also one of the reasons why the Adhyanam of Veda is very important. Provides integrity and self-respect in the society. Satyam Vada, Dharmanchara, these are very common lines most of us would have heard coming from the Veda. So a typical Vedadhyayi very rarely will actually say a lie or do something that is very much against the law of the land as such. So that's why if you really see who have really imbibed the values of Veda, they will respect all laws of the land, whether it is constitution or any law that is enforced by the land as such. And this is very important in a free and a democratic society like India at this point, where the regulation is really at the individual level. We cannot have a police or someone governing every individual in a particular country. So these values of speaking the truth and following the dharma, which is a very it's a word which has a lot of underlying meaning to it. At a very high level, we can say righteousness. Who follow that? In terms of that, the society will always be self-managed by the individuals as such. The fourth point is it creates an individual with a compassion towards one and all. There are many, again, lines in the Veda which says, Ma higumsihi, do not create some kind of disturbance or nuisance for others. Pashyema Sharada Shatam is a prarthana which a Vedadhyayi does every day. And Pashyema, for people who are knowing the language of Sanskritam, will know that it is in the Bahuvachana, meaning let us all Sharada Shatam. It says, let's see 100 autumns. That means let's all live long and have a good life. Then Sham Dvipade Shan Chatushpade. Let all the two-legged creatures and the four-legged creatures, let them all get good things in this world. So in essence, the person who's studying the Veda already understands that it is not something just for the individual, and whatever he is doing or undergoing is actually for the society at large. Finally, this is one aspect which is quite broken in the modern society at this point of time. The relationship between parents and children, relationship between teacher and children, etc., is very questionable in the current situation that we have. Whereas a student studying in a Pathashala and undergoing the Dhyan of Veda, due to the lines which says Matradevo Bhava, which means treat your mother as God, treat your father also as God, and treat your guru as God. So these are values that are imbibed very early into the child. For example, it's a very common practice in Tamil Nadu. If a student is sitting and studying, and if his guru enters the place at that point of time, immediately the student actually stands and does the Abhivadan to the guru. So these kind of value system is pretty much already present in the Adhyana system that we have. And these are some of the reasons. There are many reasons why we should do the Adhyanam. And these are some of the reasons that I thought people should actually pay attention to and make sure that we are able to realize all of these in our life by doing the study of Veda. Okay. So I just want to give a glimpse of, because I have seen both the worlds, what are the differences between a school education and the traditional Adhyanam that we do in a Pathashala. So the school education, most of us are familiar with. It's a gradual progression. Every year, the child goes from one standard to the another standard every year. It's pretty much marks oriented. So you pass a particular examination, you secure a minimum set of marks. There are not a lot of value-based education in the sense that you might have a subject called moral science, but that's about it. So there is not a large emphasis on the value-based education as such. And it is evaluated on a current year syllabus. So a particular child who is in the second or the third standard will only write exams for that year based on what he or she has studied that year. The typical holidays are summer and winter. So this is how the school education progresses. And the Veda Dhanam, on the contrary, is very different. So, for example, typically, the child who is pursuing Krishna Yajurveda Adhyanam in South India will study something called the Brahmanam. Then they proceed to something called the Samhita, which is the actual mantras. Then the Samhita itself is broken down into smaller words called Padam. Then there is a thing called Kramam, where it's a sequence of chanting, and then you go to a Ghanam. So, all in all, this education itself could take 10 years from the time a child actually starts studying. Then there are yearly exams on the portions that's completed for those years. It is largely a memory-based learning during these 7-8 years that the child spends in the Pathshala, but with an attitude of service towards Guru. The Guru does not expect anything from the child. There are no fees, nothing that's given to the Guru as such. Mostly accommodation and food are always free. And the Guru only expects that whatever the Guru teaches, the child is able to absorb that and able to reciprocate as such. And there is a lot of service. The Guru, there is no mandate that the child has to do service to the Guru, but all of these is part and parcel of the system that we live in. Sattvic food and very simple living as such. The holidays are very, very few in number. Typically in Tamil Nadu, we just have Deepavali about a week, and there is few days in summer when the heat is really scorching. So pretty much it's like a 365 days kind of a system where you have study all time. The interesting part is the last one, the final exam. For example, a child appearing for a 10th exam in a normal education system will only write the syllabus for that year, right? Obviously, the previous years add value to what he is studying there, but it is not that the English or any other subject that he is going to write will start from the first standard syllabus as such. That's very different from the Adhyanam of Veda. The first day a child starts studying Veda, he is tested on that in the 7th or 8th year when he is completing a particular milestone. Essentially, it means that right from the day one, the education starts and he's tested on all aspects right from day one as such. So that is a big difference in terms of how these systems are evaluated. Okay. So now I want to spend some time talking about why. So a lot of people ask me, right? So why did you choose to do the Adhyanam for your own son as such? What is the current scenario? At least in the south of India, this is what I typically see. Majority of the students who are joining the Pathshala or the Gurukulam are from the weaker economic strata. Either they are not able to afford the modern education, or they seem to be having some vulnerability in terms of studying the modern education, and therefore as a last resort they actually end up in a Pathshala or a Gurukulam. Literally what it means is they spend about 7 to 8 years, and they see that once 7 to 8 years I completed, I actually have a means to livelihood because of this education. In fact, this is the fastest route to livelihood than any other education you can actually see. If you really look at the modern education, you at least need an MA at this point of time, or a ME or whatever, right? Master's degree to actually get into some level of a decent job. Whereas in a Pathshala system, the current scenario is you actually can accelerate your livelihood if that's your focus very, very fast. So what happens is, because the students are from a weaker economic strata, they finish the minimum that's there, and then they take up something called Paurohityam, which is probably called Karmakand in the North India, where they perform rituals for others. And with that, they start their livelihood, and the rest of the life goes that way. This is the current scenario. And what I personally wanted to change is, this is a line, the Vakyam from the Upanishad, which says, Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. What it means, it's a very interesting line. So you also can understand the import of the Indian thought system through this. It says there are two things. Swadhyaya means self-study. Pravachana, as you understand, is telling to others, right? So that's how it is. Now, I will not even be called to this symposium if I did not put my own son into the Vedic education, but I'm just talking about the goodness of Vedic education to others. The first obvious question people will ask me is, what did you do to even come and tell us that we have to actually do the Adhyanam of Veda? So that is what I decided, that if I really have to convince people down this path, it is better that first I change myself and put my own skin into the game. And that's what I did, essentially, by putting my own son into the Adhyanam of Veda. Right. So essentially, in the modern parlance, it's called walk the talk. So that's what I think the Upanishads also maintain, that first you do the self-study, you first implement it with yourself, and then you talk about the usefulness to others as such. The second point is, a large majority of students studying in the Pathashala system at this point study only the Veda at that point of time. They may not even be proficient in Sanskritam. Having said that, the landscape is definitely changing at this point. But when I decided about 8 years back, this was how the scenario was. Right. So essentially, I wanted the study of Veda along with Sanskritam, because that language is really important to understand the purport of the Veda at a later point of time. English is really required from a modern communication perspective. The math part of it is really required because we did have a very strong Ganita Parampara even in India. So even if someone wants to get into that at a later point of time, it's good that to have a max background. So this was my point, that study the Veda along with all of these. Do not lose sight of how the actual Adhyanam is done. There is no compromise in terms of how it is done or the quality in which it is done. But at the same time, keep yourself open to other opportunities as well in life, right? And then, since we have put our son from a, in the sense that we wanted to pursue this particular path, we are under no compulsion to go for a livelihood or anything the normal set of people are doing at this point. So essentially, what we wanted to do, explore the allied areas of Veda, essentially the Veda Bhashyam, which really is the meaning of the Veda, because most of the time is spent in memorizing the Veda, but then understanding is also equally an important part. Hopefully, my son spends some time in that as well. And the Vedangam, which are the limbs of the Veda, there are 6 limbs of the Veda, which is really required for us to study to understand the Veda in its entirety as such. Okay, so now the Veda Adhyanam in the modern context, right? So lots of people ask, I cannot leave my child in a traditional Padashala. I have to obviously see him, etc. and all that. So now I've given all of the different ways in which it's happening now. Still, a lot of Padashalas are functioning in the south of India, especially in Tamil Nadu. It offers free boarding food. Typically, it's an 8-year period. 50 years back, probably they were only teaching Veda, but now it's pretty much, we also have an NOIS or a Ujjain-based syllabus to go along with it. So by the time a child completes the minimum portion of Veda, they also are knowledgeable on the modern aspects of things. There are also many schools which have attached Pathashalas. So they have regular school syllabus plus the Vedam as such. So the aim is to finish at least the bare minimum and also have a proper school training for the children. There are people who says, okay, I will just put my child in the normal school, but I will make him learn after the school hours. So that is another way of doing it. Or homeschooling, as we did, with the Vedam as the main focus, and also make sure that we have the other aspects of the modern education system taken into account as such. So this is how currently the Adhyanam system is functioning at large in south of India. Okay, so now we live in a society where even if someone is admitting their child in kindergarten, right? So essentially, what they want to see is, okay, will my child get into an IIT or an IIM, or what are the future prospects? There are so many such things that gets discussed at this point. So now, given that we are in a totally different line, what are the real future prospects after studying Vedam, right? For the very traditional people, we really do not look at any of the future prospects. It says Nishkaranena Shadangaha Vedaha Adhetavyaha Nyayascha. It says Nishkaranena. So don't even ask the reason. Please study. So that is the injunct that is given. But there could be people who could be questioning the system, saying, okay, what is it that I'm going to actually get after studying this, right? So there are the traditional opportunities where you can actually become a teacher in a particular Padashala and continue the parampara of teaching Veda. So that is one way of a livelihood that you can think of. You can also specialize in a particular Shastram. So currently, if you look at it, there are a lot of seekers for the Nyaya Shastram, for the Vyakaranam, and for the Vedanta Shastram. So you can actually specialize in one of these Shastram and then teach students and make a livelihood out of it. Specialize in Upanyasam, which is essentially doing the pravachan, which is very famous in south of India as well. So there are a lot of people who study the Veda, then they spend time studying the Itihasa and Purana and engage themselves in public discourses. This is one way of shaping the public opinion and making them more aware of the good things that's present in the traditional education. Serve as brand ambassadors of Sanatana Dharma. I firmly believe in this. A person who has had a very good Vedic education will be a very good brand ambassador of the Sanatana Dharma as such. So, and a nation itself is defined by its culture. And given that we have a very deep rooted culture of many years, people who have studied the Veda will be very good brand ambassadors representing what the true culture is. Then of late, we know the Indian knowledge system is picking up quite a bit in many areas. So you can actually specialize in certain knowledge systems like astronomy. The Indian astronomy had a very good parampara many years back. And due to the change in the educational system, we lost quite a bit of study of the astronomy and also the Bharatiya Ganitam. Both of these are picking quite a bit of attention these days with the introduction of Indian knowledge systems. So this, in my opinion, is a good future prospects of after studying Vedam. I know a lot of people who do the traditional Adhyanam and then they become a chartered accountant. So they balance both the systems as such. Humans are pretty intelligent. So as we evolve with the times, we see, okay, how do it's like the survival of the fittest. I need to be studying the traditional education. At the same time, I need to take care of myself as well. So there are many evolving thoughts at this point of time. It's a very interesting scenario to be in. And I firmly feel excited that there is going to be a good future prospect for the people who have studied the traditional Veda as such. Thank you. I think that's pretty much what I had to share today. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to take. Otherwise, I really thank this opportunity that's given to me to say a few words on my own journey. Thank you.
If anybody has any question, they can ask you. Harishi, I just wanted to know that in South, like during my survey, I realized that most of the Vedic students, they read Yajurveda. Somebody told me that in South, Samved, one shaka of Samved is very popular. Is that true?
So in South, we have all the shakhas that is very popular. So we have Rigveda, which is the Shakala Shakha of Rigveda. That is the only shakha that happens for Rigveda. We have the Kanva Shakha of Shukla Yajurveda. The Madhyandina Shakha is very famous in the north, and the Kanva Shakha is very famous in the south. So we have a good parampara of Shukla Yajurveda also. Of course, the Krishna Yajurveda is really the majority there. A lot of students you will find in Krishna Yajurveda. Nasik in Maharashtra, you actually find the Maitrayani Shakha, which is also a sub branch of the Krishna Yajurveda.
Right.
Then there are three shakhas of the Samaveda, the Kauthuma, Ranayaniya, and the Jaiminiya Shakha. So all the three shakhas are present in the south. Obviously, the majority is the Kauthuma Shakha, that is the majority, and there's a very small minority of the Jaiminiya Shakha, which is a very late revival. In fact, we just had few Vidwans left, and we were able to revive that. We have the Shaunaka Shakha of Atharva Veda also prevalent in the south. The Pipalada Shakha is more prevalent in Utkal. We have the Shaunaka Shakha. In fact, very close to my hometown in Kumbakonam, there is a new Pathashala that has opened for the last 2-3 years, which has 7 Shakha of the Veda being taught there, including the Pipalada Shakha. There is actually a person who has relocated from Orissa to that particular Pathashala, and he's training students there. So all of them are actually quite prevalent, except for the Madhyandina Shakha, which has no roots in the south at all.
Okay, right. We'll take one more question from Professor Joshi. He'll ask you one question.
Hello, can you hear me, Harishji?
Yes, I can hear.
Namaskaram. A wonderful talk I had. We enjoyed it. and learn from it. I have a troubling question because I do not have any first-hand knowledge of Veda Shiksha like you have, because your son is studying it one. What I know is that Veda, from the earliest of the Rik, Richa, to the Vedanta, they constitute one single whole, undivided. So, how, on what basis these pathshalas do their selection, and does that selection in any manner harm the wholeness, the oneness of the Veda?
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. So, Veda Vyasa, right? You would have heard of the rishi who composed the Mahabharata. Vyasa, the word Vyasa means many things. Obviously, it means a name. It also means divide. So Vyasa also means to divide. So why Vyasa got that name is essentially they realized when Kali Yuga was about to start that it's impossible, as you rightly described. The Veda was one Shabda Rashi. It was just a huge Shabda Rashi as such. And but they realized that doing the Adhyanam of this entire corpus is going to be very impossible with diminishing human intelligence as we go through the age. When I mean intelligence, it does not really mean the modern innovation as such, in general, towards the traditional subjects. So that's when the division of Vedas actually took place. On what basis the Pathshalas teach? Essentially, the basis is in their family, what is the shakha of Veda that is being followed. For example, there is a particular sutra. If you belong to the Krishna Yajurveda, you could be an Apastamba Sutra or a Bodhayana Sutra. And you also belong to a particular Veda Shakha, which has come from time immemorial, in the sense that it is imbibed into the Abhivadan that most of the students do, saying, I am a student of this particular Shakha. And on that basis is how the Pathshalas render the education as such. So there are obviously demarcations, there are commonalities between the Vedas, and there are differences also between the Vedas as such. So the same mantra, according to the Rik Shiksha, will be chanted a little different in the Rig Veda. According to the Yajurveda Shiksha, it is chanted a little different. These are only chanting differences as such, and these are some nuances that you will get into once you do a deeper study of the different shakhas as such.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste, Harish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harish, for your very, I would say a powerful talk and very hopeful talk, in the sense that since I did survey at quite a number of places, so there were some places which were, I would not say hopeless, but yeah, I mean, it was lacking that energy.
Yes.
So that is like, I mean, your talk has given much power to it, and I'll get back to you if I have more questions. And I am so thankful for your time. I know that Tuesday is really busy for you, so yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Are you okay? Is my webcam finally visible? I think now you are able to see anything at all.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Webcam. Can we see his? Can we see his photo? The video.
Yeah, at least I want to show my face before signing out.
Right, I haven't seen
Yes.
Harish so far.
Look, with two S's there. SSH.
Yeah, we can see you. Namaste.
Okay. Namaste. Thanks a lot for giving this opportunity to me.
We are equally thankful.
Namaste.
Next, we have with us Ravi Singh ji. He is an author of 5 books. These books are quite popular. I don't know how many of you are into reading books, but yeah, it is quite popular. I'll title the books Rishi Intelligence, Chanakya's Intelligence, Vriksha Ayurveda Samhita, Krishi Samhita, and Gaur Samhita. He's also co-founder of Shastra.club, which helps Indic creators build profitable businesses by spreading Indian knowledge systems. His recent project includes corporate coaching modules on Tarkashastra for TVS and Arthashastra for high-tech gears. Besides this, Raviji has also visited a couple of renowned institutes to deliver lectures. He is convener of 10th World Vriksha Ayurveda Conference 2024. He has worked as vice president in Unmukt Urja that deals in biomass energy. He is also a director of the Dhanvantri Natural Foundation. He specializes in Vriksha Ayurveda, Vedic cow rearing, and agroforestry. Um, Apart from this, he has also received a Sarojvan Parekh Award 2022 for diligence and excellence in Chanakya Niti and Arthashastra. Namaste, Raviji. We are so thankful for your time. I'll give you the center for now. I know you are running late. So yeah, we will have your talk.
Yeah, please allow me to share my presentation, and thank you so much, Nehaji, for allowing me to speak. Yeah, give me just a minute.
Same thing. Guru Prakash.
Yeah. Slides दिख रही हैं?
हाँ जी, दिख रही है.
Yeah, great. So my today's topic is bridging ancient wisdom and modern pedagogy. So मेरी topic थोड़ी specific है. So जो पहला श्लोक है, जो पहली बार मुझे इंस्पायर की थी for the pedagogy, कि 1/4 of our learning is coming from the teacher only. So टीचर का जो रोल है वो बस 25% है, only 1/4. एंड अदर पार्ट इज स्टूडेंट की अपनी जो बुद्धि है, मेधा है, स्मृति है. अगली जो क्वार्टर है वो है टीचिंग से, या दोस्तों के साथ, या डिस्कशन से, या वाद से, वाद परंपरा जो हम कहते हैं. एंड द फोर्थ इज जो पैसेज ऑफ टाइम के साथ आती है. मतलब जब भी हम पढ़ रहे हैं तो 75% ही एटमोस्ट अचीव कर सकते हैं. मे बी एट लेटर पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम हमें वो कॉम्प्रिहेंड हो जाए जो हमने पढ़ने के दौरान हमने नहीं प्राप्त की थी. सो टीचर का जो रोल है वो मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम आप देखिए 25%. अगर हम समझ रहे हैं कि 100% रोल है टीचर का, तो वो सही दिशा में हम नहीं जा रहे. द रोल इज ओनली ऑफ 25%. दूसरा, हम संस्कारों का भी बोझ शिक्षकों पे, खास करके विद्यालयों में डाल रहे हैं. ये परिवारों का कर्तव्य है, राइट. अपब्रिंगिंग का कर्तव्य है. तो ये भी पिडागॉगी का पार्ट नहीं है कि उसके संस्कार, उसका आचार व्यवहार जो है, या वो पारंपरिक गुरुकुलों का पार्ट है जहां पर मनसा वाचा कर्मणा या जितेंद्रिया होना सिखाया जाता है. इंद्रियों को अपने वश में रखना, मन में जो है वचन वही है, एक्शंस वही है, कर्म वही है. ये सारी बहुत ही प्रिलिमिनरी स्टेजेस में, लाइक 6 ईयर, 8 ईयर, 10 ईयर, 12 ईयर तक अचीव हो जाती. ओके. सो यूनिवर्सिटी, विश्वविद्यालय और कॉलेजेस आप देखोगे तो वहां पर ये पिडागॉगी का पार्ट नहीं है, राइट. आगे मैं बढ़ता हूँ. नाउ दीज आर यू कैन एक्सट्रैक्ट फ्रॉम उपनिषद. कि पहला है एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग, जो आज हम कहते हैं, अनुभव को सामने रखना. जैसे एग्रीकल्चरल कॉलेजेस में पार्ट ऑफ 6 मंथ इज ऑलवेज अबाउट टू विजिट द विलेजेस. आप हैंड ऑन प्रैक्टिस करो, लैंड टू लैब रिसर्च करो, नॉट लैब बेस्ड रिसर्च, राइट. और खास करके एग्रीकल्चर जो डोमेन है वहां पर तो आपको ये समझना पड़ेगा कि नाउ एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट आर नॉट साइंटिस्ट एंड साइंटिस्ट आर नॉट एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट. क्योंकि जो पीएचडी है, जो हमारी जो हायर आप समझो एकेडमिया है, वो क्या करती है और हमें लिमिट करती है टू लर्न स्पेसिफिक, टू लर्न पार्टिकुलर, जिससे हमें होल जो एक बर्ड आई व्यू है पूरे सब्जेक्ट का, वो हम लूज करते हैं इन द मीन टाइम. तो हमारे किसान आज साइंटिस्ट की तरह बिहेव नहीं कर रहे, और हमारे जो साइंटिस्ट है वो फार्मिंग नहीं कर रहे, हैंड ऑन प्रैक्टिस नहीं कर रहे. पहला तो एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग इज ऑलवेज द पार्ट ऑफ आवर एंशिएंट पेडागॉजी. एनालॉजिकल लर्निंग, कॉम्परेटिव बेस्ड जो लर्निंग है, एग्जाम्पल बेस्ड, राइट? जैसे कि श्लोक है, काक चेष्टा बको ध्यानम स्वान निद्रा अल्पाहारी। हम ये बच्चे को कभी नहीं कहते एफर्ट बहुत लगाओ, परसिवियर करो, बहुत ध्यान लगा के पढ़ो, बहुत मन लगा के पढ़ो। ये बहुत एब्स्ट्रैक्ट में, इससे आप चीजों को फॉलो नहीं करवा सकते वेन एवर यू कांट हैव काइंड ऑफ दृष्टांत एंड विजुअलाइजेशन। हम बच्चे को कह रहे हैं कौवे जैसी चेष्टा करो, बगुले जैसा ध्यान करो, राइट? तो ये जो कॉम्पेरेटिव एनालॉजी है जो नोन टू अननोन ले जाता है, राइट? हम कोई भी टॉपिक को एज एब्स्ट्रैक्ट, एज अननोन इंट्रोड्यूस नहीं करते। देयर इज ऑलवेज अ काइंड ऑफ एनालॉजिकल लर्निंग मेथोडोलॉजी, राइट? एंड देन यू कैन गो ऑन लाइक पर्सनलाइज टीचिंग, क्योंकि एक ही गुरुकुल में जो आचार्य हैं वो 10 विषय पढ़ा रहे हैं, 4 विषय पढ़ा रहे हैं, तो वो प्रकृति और आचार व्यवहार स्टूडेंट्स की समझ रहे हैं। एक टीचर को एक अननोन क्राउड के सामने अपने लेक्चर को डिलीवर करना ऑलवेज, आप समझोगे, एक डिफिकल्ट टास्क है। और हर सब्जेक्ट के अलग टीचर हैं, तो अभी कंपार्टमेंटलाइजेशन ऑफ जो सब्जेक्ट्स है ये गुरुकुल सिस्टम में आपको नहीं दिखाई देता है। तो यहाँ पे पर्सनलाइज टीचिंग है कि एक ग्रुप ऑफ 30-40 पीपल हैं जो एसोसिएटेड हैं फॉर इयर्स, एंड दैट टीचर इज काइंड ऑफ मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी इन हिज स्किल सेट, एक्सपर्टीज एंड ऑल्सो डिलीवरी, ठीक है? एंड देन प्रश्न उपनिषद आप देख सकते हैं, जहां पर उपनिषद itself called प्रश्न उपनिषद that allowed questioning, right? यहाँ पर कोई वो अप्रोच नहीं है कि यू आर गिविंग अ मोनोलॉग एंड देन देयर एट द एंड ऑफ सेशन देयर इज डाउट, Q&A and all. It starts with questioning, right? और इसको हम ग्रीक मेथोडोलॉजी में सोक्रेटिक क्वेश्चनिंग एंड डायलेक्टिकल रीजनिंग बोल सकते हैं, जहां पर सब्जेक्टिव ऑब्जेक्टिव को हम बैलेंस करके आगे बढ़ते हैं। सो दीज थिंग्स जो अभी आप देखोगे कि मॉडर्न एजुकेशनल जो पैरेलल है उसमें ये इवॉल्विंग आपको दिखाई देता है। दीज ऑल आर पार्ट ऑफ आवर एंशियंट। नाउ यू कैन ऑल्सो गो फॉर जो हम टेस्ट पैरामीटर्स है, आज हम जो टेस्ट करते हैं एग्जाम बेस्ड होता है, OMR शीट्स होते हैं, मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चंस होता है, उसमें भी आपको देखेंगे जो अप्रोचेस रहे थे वो वाद परंपरा से थे कि पीपल वेयर गिवन टॉपिक टू डिबेट ऑन एंड ऑल पीपल वेयर लिसनिंग, एंड देन द क्वालिटी ऑफ रीजनिंग विल डिसाइड कि उसकी कितनी अच्छी लर्निंग हुई है सब्जेक्ट को लेके। सो दीज वेर ऑल्सो काइंड ऑफ जो हम कहते हैं द टेस्टिंग पैरामीटर, जिससे वो बच्चे की हम प्रामाणिकता देख पा रहे हैं कि उसने उस विद्या को लिया है या नहीं लिया है। नाउ मॉडर्न एजुकेशन लैक्स ऑल दीज 4, जो 4 हम बात करते हैं। पहला है अधिकारी, पात्रता। पात्रता इज लिटरली द वेसल। हमें लगता है डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन है एजुकेशन का, दैट इज वन पार्ट, बट यहां पर पात्रता पर मैं एक एग्जांपल देना चाहूंगा। जैसे जो चिकित्सक जो डॉक्टर बनेंगे आज के टर्म में अगर हम कहें, तो उनकी सबसे पहले इंद्रियों की जो हम कहते हैं उसकी स्क्रूटनी होनी बहुत आवश्यक है कि ये क्राइसिस को देख के अपने प्राइसेस को बढ़ाता है क्या। इफ द पर्सन इज वेरी मच लोवी, वेरी मच अपॉर्चुनिस्टिक, तो वो अधिकारी नहीं होता था डॉक्टर बनने का। क्राइसिस को देख करके पेशेंट से काइंड ऑफ उसमें कोई एम्पैथी नहीं है, सिंपैथी नहीं है, वो ज्ञान को हार्नेस करना चाहता है, वो अपॉर्चुनिस्ट होना चाहता है और वो उस ज्ञान का मिसयूज करेगा, राइट? तो ये जो अधिकारी है ये बहुत पहले डिसाइड होता था कि जो डिजायर टू लर्न है या ऑथेंटिसिटी या जो प्रयोजन है उसका जो प्रयोग कैसे होगा वो हम डिसाइड करेंगे नॉलेज देने से पहले। एंड विषय की क्लैरिफिकेशन बहुत अच्छे से होती थी। प्रयोजन भी बहुत वेल डिफाइंड होता था कि व्हाई इट मैटर। एंड ऑब्वियसली जो हमने कहा कि strong teacher student connection, because ki one teacher is giving 10 lectures of 10 different domains, तो वो जो long term association है that bridges the gap between the psychological barrier जो हम कहते हैं टीचर और स्टूडेंट के बीच में, वो एक समय के साथ, and we say time is a good leveler. Now अभी हम देखते हैं कि जो मॉडर्न एजुकेशन है वो ज्ञान शक्ति को पहले इंपार्ट करता है, देन एक्सपेक्ट करता है कि क्रिया शक्ति आएगी, एग्जीक्यूशन आएगा, एंड देन वो पर्पस एट लेटर स्टेज ड्राइव वो ढूंढ लेगा, राइट? नाउ रियल लर्निंग हैपेंस व्हेन यू एक्चुअली क्रिएट जिज्ञासा। जब आपने जिज्ञासा अगर आपने जगा दी, इच्छा शक्ति जगा दी, that always drives the Kriya Shakti, and doing actions, doing experimentation brings a good stable kind of knowledge जो लाइफ लॉन्ग रहती है, राइट? मतलब इट्स नॉट थियोरेटिकल लर्निंग जो हम आज के सेंस में कहते हैं कि साइंस में बेसिकली जो लैब बेस्ड एक्सपेरिमेंट्स जो हम कहते हैं, हैंड ऑन प्रैक्टिस, आपको हाथ गंदे करना है, एक्सपेरिमेंट्स में जानना है, उसके बाद जब आप एक्शंस ओरिएंटेड होगे तब आपकी लर्निंग और अच्छी होगी। बट पॉइंट इज कि डिजायर टू लर्न सबसे पहले हम टारगेट करते हैं, तो ये आपको गुरुकुल सिस्टम में पहले दिखता है, और ये आज के एजुकेशन सिस्टम ये ऑलमोस्ट रिवर्स है। वी आर फेड अप विथ लॉट्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, एंड गूगल है, इंटरनेट है, वी हैव लॉट्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, राइट? बट टिंकरिंग और इनोवेशन एंड क्रिएटिंग न्यू थिंग्स, सॉल्विंग प्रॉब्लम, ये एक डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ एलिफेंट हो जाता है, राइट? क्योंकि हमने डिजायर पे ज्यादा बात नहीं की, इच्छा शक्ति पे बात नहीं की, उसको बढ़ाने की बात नहीं की, राइट? आपने जिज्ञासा, जो जो गुरु है वो, उसने जो क्रियोसिटी है वो अगर उसने खुद स्पार्क कर दी, तो वो जो स्व अध्याय है जो हम कहते हैं, जो पार्ट ऑफ यम और नियम में हम कहते हैं, स्व अध्याय को ड्राइव करने से वो इन्वेस्टिगेटिव, एलेबरेटिव एंड डीप डाउन वो जा करके काइंड ऑफ जो हम कहते हैं रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी, वो एक्चुअल रिसर्च की तरफ वो जा सकता है, बट इट शुड स्टार्ट विथ इच्छा शक्ति, राइट? अप्रोच पे भी हम देख सकते हैं कि जो अभी का पूरा अप्रोच है वो पार्टिकुलर टू यूनिवर्सल है, अपरा विद्या अप्रोच। जैसे पीसेस को समझ के हम होल को समझने का प्रयास करते हैं, वेदर इट इज साइंस, वेदर इट्स एनीथिंग, हम बॉइल डाउन करते हैं, सिंप्लीफाई करते हैं सिचुएशन को, कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज रिड्यूस करते हैं, एक आइडियल सिचुएशन क्रिएट करते हैं, एंड देन ट्राई टू लर्न दोज प्रिंसिपल्स, ऑब्जर्वेशंस, और उसको हम प्रोजेक्ट करते हैं पूरे यूनिवर्सल पे, राइट? और विद्या अप्रोच इज मोर लाइक यूनिवर्सल टू पार्टिकुलर, ठीक है? इसके एग्जाम्पल्स से ज्यादा समझ में आएंगे कि ये मैं क्या कह रहा हूँ, इसमें अप्रोच में क्या डिफरेंस है। तो जैसे कि पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से मैं बताऊं कि हमारे कॉलेजेस में मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग की मेरी बैकग्राउंड रही, तो थर्मोडायनेमिक्स के प्रिंसिपल्स तब समझ में आए जब वो हीट ट्रांसफर और रेफ्रिजरेशन के सब्जेक्ट से उसने क्रॉस किया, राइट? मतलब वेरी मच कॉम्प्लेक्स जब नॉलेज सिस्टम या एक टॉपिक आई, और वहां पे जब हम अपने डाउट्स को, अपने फंडामेंटल्स को क्लियर करने के लिए वापस रेफर किए फंडामेंटल्स को, देन वी गॉट द एक्चुअल प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ थर्मोडायनेमिक्स। और हम अभी एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि वी कैन गिव दी fundamentals, and somehow they will at later stage they will associate all those fundamentals to understand or to comprehend all those complex systems and everything. But we forget कि हम बचपन में बच्चों को कभी ग्रामर और कभी अक्षर नहीं पढ़ाते when they start learning the language, right? जो अष्टाध्यायी भी आप देखोगे तो वो माहेश्वर सूत्र से प्रारंभ होता है। जब आप देखोगे पतंजलि, ये जो योग दर्शन है वो समाधि पाद से प्रारंभ होता है, समाधि की ही बात सबसे पहले प्रारंभ हो जा रही है, योग क्या है, यम नियम क्या है, उस पर बात ही नहीं हो रही। सो एट वन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इट ऑल्सो क्रिएट्स गुड इच्छा शक्ति, जब आप आउटकम बता दो बहुत पहले में कि जो हम पढ़ने जा रहे हैं उसकी आउटकम क्या है, वो उसकी ट्रेजेक्टरी क्या है, राइट? और हम क्या जानने और क्या समझने वाले हैं। और जो आज हम जेनजी या जो शब्द हम प्रयोग करते हैं, दे बिकम वेरी मच ट्रांजैक्शनल। अगर उन्हें लगा कि ये बेनिफिट नहीं है, मैं इतना समय दे रहा हूँ, इसका आउटकम हमें नहीं पता है, तो दे विल नॉट बी वेरी मच इंटरेस्टेड इन दैट पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक। तो ये जो अप्रोच है, सभी शास्त्रों में आप देखेंगे कॉम्प्लेक्स सूत्र बहुत प्रारंभ में ही वो शुरुआती श्लोक आपको दिखेंगे, और धीरे धीरे वो आगे के अध्याय में, आगे के समुल्लासों में वो जो है वो सिंपल फाउंडेशंस आपको वापस दिखते हैं। ओके, अभी आपको, आप अगर जो साइंस की मेथोडोलॉजी है वहां पर देखोगे, अनुमान इज देयर, इन्फेरेंस इज देयर, जो हम कहते हैं कि लॉजिकल डिडक्शंस आर इनफेलिएबल, बट कोर्ट रूम डिबेट में जाएंगे तो प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण इज सुपीरियर, वहां लॉजिक इज नॉट एनफ, राइट? तो यहाँ पर आइदर देयर इज डायरेक्ट परसेप्शन इज वेरी मच सपोर्टेड, emphasized, और लॉजिकल एनालिसिस, स्टैटिस्टिक्स, कैलकुलस एंड ऑल दोज थिंग्स आर देयर। बट ऋषि गौतम कहेंगे कि आपको चार जो है पैरामीटर प्रमाण शास्त्र आपको एक साथ प्रयोग में लाना है, टू नो थिंग्स, टू वैलिडेट थिंग्स, एंड टू हैव अ गुड एपिस्टेमोलॉजी। ठीक है, आपको इनकी बैलेंस लेके आपको चलनी है, राइट? इट्स नॉट जस्ट अबाउट जैसे कि मैं अगर आपको बताऊं कि अगर प्रत्यक्ष हमें आयुर्वेद से कोई क्योर दिख रहा है तो इट इज वेरी मच साइंटिफिक, एंड तो उसको क्या कहते हैं, स्यूडो साइंस कहते हैं। तो वैलिडेशन अभी हुई नहीं है, तो उसको हम इसलिए स्यूडो साइंस कहते हैं क्योंकि प्रत्यक्ष फ्रेमवर्क इज आउट ऑफ स्कोप ऑफ साइंस, बिकॉज दे से टू एयर इज ह्यूमन। तो उन्होंने डायरेक्ट परसेप्शन को आउट ऑफ एनालिसिस पार्ट ऑफ सिस्टम रखा ही नहीं, राइट। बट कोर्ट रूम एनालॉजी में, जहां पर कोर्ट रूम डिबेट होता है, जहां पर लॉयर्स होते हैं, वहां पर उन्होंने प्रत्यक्ष को रखा, बट अनुमान को उन्होंने बैकसीट पे रख दिया। तो कई चीजें, इवन इवन इफ लाइक जो हिस्टोरिसिटी पे हम बात करते हैं कि ह्वेन सांग ने ये कहा, सो इट्स मोर लाइक शब्द प्रमाण, राइट। अगर ह्वेन सांग ने कहा, एक ऐसे न्यूट्रल ऑब्जर्वर ने कहा जो भारत का नहीं है, तो ये ज्यादा वैलिडेशन देता है। और 3,000 साल पहले किसने क्या कहा, उसकी वैलिडेशन, जो पूरी अप्रोच है, आप देखोगे समहाउ इट्स मोर लाइक सर्कुलर साइटेशंस एंड एवरीथिंग, एक दूसरे को साइट करते, सो इट इज वन काइंड ऑफ वैलिडेटिंग द नॉलेज, इट्स नॉट द 100% ऑफ वैलिडेशन फ्रेमवर्क, राइट। देयर आर अदर फ्रेमवर्क्स टू जिसको हम सामने रखते हैं, इट इज फ्रॉम न्याय दर्शन। नाउ मॉडर्न एजुकेशन स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम स्केप्टिज्म, राइट। आप डाउट से स्टार्ट करते हो। हमारी ज्ञान परंपरा श्रद्धा, वीर, स्मृति, समाधि, प्रज्ञा पूर्वक इतरेशम, यहाँ से वो प्रारंभ करना चाहती है कि उत्साह क्रिएट करना है, राइट। जैसे कि आपने फिजिक्स पे पहले डाउट नहीं किया, राइट, यू हैव सम फेथ ऑन फिजिक्स, फिजिक्स टीचर। अगर आपने पहले ही क्वेश्चन कर देते कि नहीं, मुझे फिजिक्स के टीचर पे विश्वास ही नहीं है, मुझे फिजिक्स पे विश्वास नहीं है, तो दैट क्रिएट्स अ बैरियर, और बहुत हार्ड टाइम आप अप्रोच करोगे उस सब्जेक्ट को समझने में। तो when something comes out of Sanskrit, a very much ancient IKS, so it starts with skepticism कि ये pragmatic होगा कि नहीं, रेलिवेंट होगा कि नहीं, कॉन्टेम्पररी जो प्रॉब्लम्स है उसको सॉल्व कर पाएगा कि नहीं। तो एकेडमिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जो उसकी, जो हम कहते हैं जो इंटीग्रिटी है, वो क्या कहते हैं, उसकी मेरिट पर हम उसको पढ़ाई करें कि वो सब्जेक्ट क्या कहता है, उसको फुल मेरिट दें, उसको एक डीप रेवरेंस के साथ, एक उत्साह के साथ जब हम उस अप्रोच को लेते हैं, तो दैट ब्रिंग्स डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ दृष्टि, जो आपको नई चीजें सीखने में मदद करता है, एंड इट बिकम्स अ काइंड ऑफ इंट्यूशनल एक्सरसाइज, राइट। नाउ ये जनरली मैं टॉक्स में कहता हूं, बिकॉज दृष्टि वर्ड मैंने ला दिया, तो बाइनरी या नॉन बाइनरी, दैट जो रिनेसा हुआ था वेस्ट में, पुनर्जागरण जिसको हम कहते हैं, वहां पर बेसिकली रीजन ओवर पावर किया था, जो तर्क शास्त्र है। एंड जो ग्रीक जो लर्निंग्स है, वो थ्रू अरब अरब टीचिंग्स ये री इंट्रोड्यूस हुई थी यूरोप में, राइट। और वहां पर फेथ बैकसीट में चला गया। तो पहले रिलीजन का डोमिनेंस रहा, फिर रीजन आई, तो रिलीजन बैकसीट में चला गया, नास्तिकता आ गई, राइट। तो आप देखोगे इमोशंस और रीजंस, ये दोनों फिर अलग दो बाइनरी में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट हो जाती है। तो हुआ क्या, आप देखोगे जब हमारे कविताओं में कभी साइंस मिलता है, तो ये लोगों को विश्वास इसलिए नहीं होता, बिकॉज दे थिंक कि इट शुड बी काइंड ऑफ मैथमेटिकल इक्वेशन, सिंबल्स में होने चाहिए, देन इट इज समथिंग वेरी मच साइंटिफिक इन नेचर। तो इट्स अ लेंस, काइंड ऑफ लेंस, कि हमने नॉलेज को भी रसों में बांधा है, राइट। वेद को आप देखोगे वो छंदों के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है, उसके बाद रामायण आई, महाभारत आई, फिर पुराण आई, फिर गीत आए, फिर दोहे आए। तो नॉलेज के डेसिमेशन पे हमने ज्यादा काम किया, उसमें हमने रसों को जोड़ा, भावों को जोड़ा, ताकि उसकी मास डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन हो पाए। इट वॉज नॉट इंटेलेक्चुअल एक्सरसाइज एंड रिलेटेड एंड रेस्ट्रिक्टेड टू वेरी मच एलीट, राइट। एलीट में रिस्ट्रिक्ट होने से वेस्ट ने बेसिकली एम्पेरियलिज्म के नए टूल्स ढूंढे, जिसमें उन्होंने एकेडमिया को भी पकड़ा। आफ्टर रिलीजन दे पिक्ड एकेडमिया एज अ टूल ऑफ एकेडमिक एम्पेरियलिज्म, की फ्यू पब्लिकेशन एजेंसीज विल कंट्रोल द नॉलेज, एंड वहां पर जो पब्लिश होगा वही ऑथेंटिक होगा, वो जो बोलेंगे वही साइंस होगा, एंड आउट ऑफ दैट एनीथिंग दैट इज कमिंग दैट शुड बी कॉल्ड स्यूडो साइंस, ओके। और यहाँ पर आप देखोगे ये पोएम्स में है, ये स्टोरी टेलिंग में, या कथाओं में है, राइट। तो साइंस की बुक में अगर आप रसों को डालते हैं, इफ देयर इज सम सेंस ऑफ इमोशंस, राइट, स्टोरी टेलिंग, कि आप विज्ञान की डिस्कवरी पे बात कर पाओ, राइट, तो वहां पर भी ये बाइनरी को ये तोड़ता है कि रीजन और इमोशंस और फेथ ये हम एक साथ ला सकते हैं। इट्स लाइक हमारे जो इसरो के चेयरमैन है सोमनाथ जी, वो क्यों मंदिर जा रहे हैं, राइट? अ पर्सन दैट इज वेरी मच साइंटिफिक इन हिज टेम्पर शुड नॉट बी लाइक विजिटिंग प्लेसेस ऑफ फेथ, राइट? भक्ति वाले प्लेसेस पे वो क्यों जा रहे हैं? तो ये बाइनरी बेसिकली टू पोलर एंड्स की बात करता है। ये एक वेस्टर्न लेंस है जहां पर हम इन चीजों को देखते हैं। अगेन बाइनरी फिर सब्जेक्टिव और ऑब्जेक्टिव दो पार्ट में तोड़ता है, जिसको हम ब्रिज कर सकते हैं आज के समय में। लाइक ऑब्जेक्टिविटी इतनी ओवर पावर हो गई कि मेरा जो ऑब्जर्वेशन है वो इररेलेवेंट है जब तक हमने 5 रिसर्चर्स को साइट नहीं किया है। एंड सब्जेक्टिविटी रिलीजन या जो रिलीजियस बुक्स हैं, बाइबल हैं, जो आप देखोगे तो वहां पर यह है कि वो डॉगमेटिक आपको दिखते हैं, कि जो ऑब्जेक्टिव टेस्टिंग के रियल्म से बाहर अपने आप को रखते हैं। तो देयर इज डाइकोटॉमी जो बट गई सब्जेक्टिव और ऑब्जेक्टिव डाइकोटॉमी में। और ये न्याय दर्शन में हम कहते हैं प्रमाता और प्रमाण को आपको एक साथ लाना है। ऑब्जर्वर एंड द ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ नॉलेज, इट शुड बी पार्ट ऑफ योर सिस्टम, जो बाद में जाके क्वांटम फिजिक्स में एक हो गई, क्लासिकल फिजिक्स में ये अलग रही। प्रमाता इज नॉट इंपॉर्टेंट। जो हम आज भी कहते हैं सिस्टम ड्रिवन होना चाहिए, पर्सन डिपेंडेंट। हम किसी सिस्टम को नहीं बनाना चाहते, सिस्टम ड्रिवन, एसओपी ड्रिवन होना चाहिए। तो वो इट्स वेरी मच ऑब्जेक्टिव रियलिटी को हम आगे रखते हैं। प्राचीन काल में आप जाओगे तो प्रमाता इज मोर इंपॉर्टेंट, द नोअर। उसके बारे में बहुत ज्यादा बात होगी कि उसका मन, बुद्धि, चित्त, अहंकार, उसकी अपब्रिंगिंग कैसे है, उसकी ग्रोथ कैसे है। इट्स नॉट अबाउट द नॉलेज बट हु इज डेसिमेटिंग द नॉलेज। तो प्रमाता ये एक जो पार्ट है, मतलब सब्जेक्टिव और ऑब्जेक्टिव को साथ लाना, ये लास्ट टाइम प्लेटो और एरिस्टोटल के टाइम में हुआ था, जिसको हम डायलेक्टिकल प्रोसेस बोलते हैं, डायलेक्टिक्स, राइट? सब्जेक्टिव और ऑब्जेक्टिव को एक साथ एक बैलेंस लेके चलना। तो ये जो अप्रोच है ये भी आपको दिखता है। और प्रमाता जो है, इट्स हेल्दी बॉडी, आरोग्य है उसमें, माइंड इज पीसफुल, शांत मन है, स्थिर बुद्धि है। एंड योगिक कॉस्मोलॉजी का वो पार्ट है, राइट? योग इज नॉट फॉर हेल्थ, हट योग इज फॉर हेल्थ, बट योग इज बेसिकली फॉर योर कॉग्निशन, राइट? तो कॉग्निटिव सेट्स पे हम कभी नहीं बात करते, राइट? हम पात्रता पे नहीं बात करते। एक बच्चा हमारे क्लास में आया, अब मुझे उसको नॉलेज देना है, उसकी अपग्रेडेशन पे बात नहीं होती, उसके स्तर की बात नहीं होती, उसके स्तर को बढ़ाने की बात नहीं होती, राइट? तो यहाँ पर प्रमाता इज वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट। और ये जो पूरा यम नियम प्रत्याहार आसन का जो पूरा है, तो ये इट्स अ फ्रेमवर्क फॉर संप्रज्ञात प्रोसेस, जहां पर हम प्रज्ञा की बात करते हैं। इट इज नॉट सिंपली फॉर मोक्ष एंड निर्वाण, राइट? यहाँ पर कुछ फ्रेमवर्क्स आप देख सकते हैं। यहाँ पर आयुर्वेद को मैं आप सामने लाना चाहूंगा। तो अभी इसने कौन सी एक बड़ी प्रॉब्लम को इसने सॉल्व की है, एंशियंट जो हमारी लर्निंग है। सबसे पहले मैं आयुर्वेद पे आता हूँ। आयुर्वेद के जो कॉलेजेस हैं, वो पहले साल के जो भी कोर्सेस हैं, उनके सेमेस्टर्स हैं, वो बच्चों को नहीं समझ में आते आज भी, क्योंकि वो पढ़ाते हैं दर्शन शास्त्र और मेटाफिजिक्स के ऊपर, राइट? कि जैसे कि एलोपैथी इज मोर ऑन मॉलिकुलर अप्रोच, बट आयुर्वेद इज मोर ऑन सिस्टम अप्रोच, दैट इज फ्रॉम वात पित्त कफ जो फ्रेमवर्क है। तो बचपन से जो हमारी मेटा है, जो फिजिक्स की हमारी समझ है, केमिस्ट्री की हमारी समझ है, वो मिसमैच करती है फर्स्ट ईयर स्टूडेंट जो आयुर्वेद के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, ठीक है? और जैसे ही वो मिसमैच करती है, और एक तो यहाँ पर ये देखा जाता है कि जो खराब रैंक आता है मेडिकल एग्जामिनेशंस में, वो फिर आयुर्वेद लेते हैं, तो पहले ही इन्फीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स के साथ जाते हैं, फिर मेटाफिजिक्स समझ में नहीं आती है। लेटर स्टेज, लेटर ईयर्स में वो वैलिडेशन ही पढ़ते रहते हैं। एवरी आयुर्वेद के कोई दवाई है तो उसको वैलिडेट ही कर रहा है एलोपैथी, राइट? उसको जो लाइसेंस मिलेंगे, उसके जो प्रोडक्ट आएंगे, वो वैलिडेशन, तो वैलिडेशन में ही उसकी पूरी दुनिया है, और उसको फाउंडेशंस नहीं पता है। तो देर इज नो इनोवेशन आउट ऑफ दैट एजुकेशन, राइट? तो अभी क्या हुआ उसका एक सॉल्यूशन के रूप में, कि जो चरक संहिता है वो पूरी संस्कृत में। नाउ इफ पर्सन कमिंग फ्रॉम अ संस्कृत बैकग्राउंड इज वेल वर्स्ड विद द श्लोकास एंड सूत्रास, और वो जब चरक संहिता को देखता है, वो जब उस मेटाफिजिक्स को समझता है, तब उसको आयुर्वेद सही में समझ में आती है। और फिर उसको पता चलता है कि इंग्रेडिएंट्स की प्योरिटी भी हमें काम करनी चाहिए, हमें एग्रीकल्चर पे भी काम करनी चाहिए, कि जहां से हम मेडिसिन को ला रहे हैं, इट्स नॉट अबाउट करक्यूमिन ऑफ टर्मरिक, बट कहाँ ग्रो हो रहा है, उसकी एक जियो टैगिंग है, कौन से क्षेत्र में हो रहा है। सो इट्स ऑल अबाउट कि फाउंडेशंस उसकी अगर स्ट्रांग है, तो वो आज का जो जो थ्राइविंग है वर्ल्ड मार्केट में, आयुर्वेद एंड योग इज देयर, राइट? उसको मजबूत करने के लिए बैकएंड में आपको उसकी फाउंडेशनल नॉलेज, फंडामेंटल्स क्लियर होने चाहिए, जो संस्कृत से आएगी, जो उसके मेटाफिजिक्स के साथ आएगी जो संस्कृत में है, राइट, और उसकी लॉजिक के साथ है। आपको एरिस्टोटेलियन लॉजिक नहीं पढ़नी है, आपको न्याय वैशेषिक की लॉजिक पढ़नी है, राइट। आपको एटॉमिक थ्योरी नहीं पढ़नी है, आपको पंच महाभूत एंड सांख्य दर्शन पढ़ना है। आपको फिजियोलॉजी सिंपली नहीं देखनी है, आपको फार्माकोलॉजी नहीं देखनी है, आपको द्रव्य गुण कर्म की समझ होना चाहिए। बट समहाउ वो पास करने लायक पढ़ते हैं और बहुत तेजी से फर्स्ट और सेकंड सेमेस्टर को पार करते हैं, एंड वेरी मच वीक इन फाउंडेशन ऑफ आयुर्वेद। दूसरा, नए जो मॉडर्न यूनिवर्सिटीज है वो क्या सीख सकते हैं, तो न्याय दर्शन पे जैसे अभी बात हो रही थी, तर्कशास्त्र इज वेरी दैट इसकी रिक्वायरमेंट, चाहे वो कोडिंग कर रहा हो उसको भी लॉजिक की समझ होनी चाहिए, कोई भी सब्जेक्ट वो पढ़ रहा हो। साइंटिफिक टेम्परामेंट क्या होती है, हाउ टू थिंक इन ए स्ट्रक्चर्ड सिक्वेंशियल मैनर, हाउ टू डू डिस्कोर्सेस, हाउ टू डिबेट अ थिंग, हाउ टू हैव ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग, हाउ टू कंक्लूड इन फ्यूअर नंबर ऑफ वर्ड्स, ये सारी जो बातें हैं ये न्याय दर्शन से आती है। बट इसका जब प्रयास किया गया तो अजीम प्रेम जी फाउंडेशन के पास जब ये प्रोजेक्ट गई तो उन्होंने देखा और उन्होंने स्टेट पे क्लेम कर दिया कि नहीं, दिस इज नॉट वेरी मच इंडियन, दिस साउंड्स वेरी मच साइंटिफिक एंड दिस कांट बी इन संस्कृत एंड वेरी मच लाइक 3000 ईयर ओल्ड। तो ये जो स्केप्टिज्म, जैसे मैंने बोला कि स्केप्टिज्म और जो प्री नोशंस हैं वो जब तक आप साइड नहीं करोगे तो आप ओपन माइंडेड टेक्निकली नहीं हो, राइट, टू एम्ब्रेस न्यू काइंड ऑफ अ सिस्टम। और तर्कशास्त्र एंड न्याय दर्शन हैज वेरी मच पोटेंशियल इन दैट कैटेगरी। तो मेटाफिजिक्स क्लियर होने से ये होती है कि सिर्फ हर्बल मेडिसिन नहीं है आयुर्वेद, राइट। 32 से ज्यादा मेथडोलॉजी है जिसमें एवरीथिंग, मतलब साइकोसोमेटिक डिसऑर्डर से लेकर के फास्टिंग से लेकर के ऑलरेडी बहुत सारी चीजें थी जो वेस्ट के कोई आके बोलते हैं तब वो वैलिडेट होती है। सो व्हाई इट इज दैट, बिकॉज शब्द प्रमाण हमारे फ्रेमवर्क में है, सिर्फ अभी वैलिडेशन फ्रेमवर्क में जो हमने कहा एविडेंस एविडेंस बेस्ड, अगर हमने 1000 पेशेंट्स को क्योर किया है फॉर पर्टिकुलर मेथड, तो दिस इज ऑलरेडी अ काइंड ऑफ अ टेस्टिमोनी और अ काइंड ऑफ वैलिडेशन बिफोर कि 25 साल तक कोई एक बहुत बड़ा रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट ले और फिर उसको आज के आरसीटी एंड ऑल दोज रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी से प्रूफ करे। एक बार ये हुआ कि एग्रीकल्चर में मैं अग्निहोत्र के मेथड को लेके गया तो उन्होंने कहा कि इसको हम वैलिडेट कैसे करेंगे, वी डोंट हैव द वैलिडेशन पैरामीटर। तो मैंने कहा कि सर पैरामीटर्स को ही आपको इंप्रूव करने हैं, आपके पास वैलिडेशन फ्रेमवर्क नहीं है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि ये स्यूडो साइंस है, बिकॉज इट वर्क्स, इट हैज द प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण। इसने फंगस डिजीज को कंट्रोल किया है पूरे 20 एकड़ के फार्म में। सो जो हमारे रिसर्चेस, हमारे अप्रोचेस को हाइंडर कर रहा है, वो सारे हाइंड्रेंस के जो मेथडोलॉजी है वो पूरा वेस्टर्न मेथडोलॉजी एंड एरिस्टोटेलियन फ्रेमवर्क है। आईकेएस की जब हम बात करते हैं तो पहली तो एक उसकी दृष्टि पहले भारतीय होनी चाहिए। जब आप बाहर के लेंस से बार बार देखोगे, लाइक हिस्टोरिसिटी इज देयर, हमने तक्षशिला में ये किया, हमने नालंदा में ये किया, बट द हार्ड पार्ट इज कैन वी रेप्लिकेट दोज थिंग्स इंस्टेड ऑफ हैविंग प्राइड इन दैट एंशियंट स्टोरी टेलिंग। और ये अथर्ववेद में ही आता है कि व्हेन वी आर वेरी मच प्राइड इन स्टोरी टेलिंग, then somehow we have lost the knowledge of Ved and Gau Palan. ये अथर्ववेद का ही श्लोक है। So we have lost our knowledge system, but before placing or putting everything in place, we should have our drishti, we should have our own framework to bring all those things in places. Like metaphysics creates culture, culture produces words, words constitutes worldview, worldview coherents actions. यहाँ पर मेटा ही अगर अलग हो, लाइक योलो इज देयर, थ्री थिंग्स आर देयर, यू ओनली लिव वंस, एंड यू हैव प्लेजर एज अ सोर्स ऑफ या गोल ऑफ योर लाइफ, जिसमें सिर्फ अर्थ आगे आ जाता है, बाकी सारी पुरुषार्थ पीछे चले जाते हैं। जो धर्म की अभी बात हो रही थी वो सारा बैकसीट पे चला जाता है। एंड इंद्रियों का कंट्रोल में नहीं होना, सेंस ऑर्गन्स का कंट्रोल में नहीं होना। सो पात्रता डेवलप करते हैं, पुनर्जन्म को इंट्रोड्यूस करते हैं विदाउट बीइंग एपोलोजेटिक, क्योंकि आईकेएस आएगा तो अपने साथ पूरे सिस्टम को लाएगा। इफ यू आर चेरी पिकिंग हेयर एंड देयर, तो समहाउ इट्स लाइक डाइजेशन प्रोसेस जो वेस्ट ऑलरेडी लास्ट 30-40 ईयर से कर रहा है। लाइक जो मैं आपको ये दिखाना चाह रहा हूं, दिस इज आवर फ्रेमवर्क, सेक्रेड इज देयर ऑलवेज, Kula is part of the community. Belonging is there, sense of belonging. Meaning is there. Nishkam कर्म is there. Union is there, right? But अभी की framework क्या है? Lots of entropy is there. Everything is secularized, right? Sacred in work, in learning is not there. Money is the motivating factor. Community is atomized. There is no kul parampara. We regularly say gurukul, gurukul, लेकिन कुल हम भूल जाते हैं कि गुरुकुल का मतलब यह है कि एक व्यक्ति जो परिवार के कुल में है उसको बड़े कुल में हम ले आए, उसको एक बड़ी फैमिली का हम पार्ट बनाए. दैट इज द सेंस ऑफ द वर्ड कुल इन गुरुकुल. एंड state is directly influencing the individual. So सारा जो अभी अप्रोच है, इट्स अ प्ले ऑफ अगेन द बाइनरी स्टेट एंड इंडिविजुअल, जिसमें स्पेक्ट्रम होता था पहले, जिसमें फैमिली है, कुल है, गुरु है, समाज है. वो सारे स्पेक्ट्रम जब हम लूज करते हैं, देन हर चीज जो हम कहते हैं सरकार को करना चाहिए, दैट प्ले बिटवीन स्टेट एंड इंडिविजुअल. तो ये जब अप्रोच होता है, इसमें कॉस्ट ऑफ ट्रस्ट इज वेरी हाई, राइट. मिसट्रस्ट बहुत आराम से अपना जगह बना लेता है, और हम जो मेटा को समझना चाह रहे हैं, जो लर्निंग सिस्टम को देखना चाह रहे हैं, और हम बचना चाह रहे हैं, जो एक्चुअल आईकेएस का पार्ट है, कि उसमें देवत्व होता है, उसमें नॉलेज में पर्पस होता है, उसमें सेंस ऑफ बिलोंगिंग होता है, उसमें सर्व करना होता है. इट्स नॉट जस्ट द इंटेलेक्चुअल एक्सरसाइज, बट लाइक हम नर्चर करें. जो भी हम शब्द सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट वर्ड यूज करते हैं, द एक्चुअल संस्कृत मीनिंग ऑफ सस्टेनेबल इज धार्मिक, राइट. अगर उसको आप डिकोड करोगे तो आपको धार्मिक दिखेगा. और यहाँ पर ये जो पूरा फ्रेमवर्क है, दिस मेटा डिफाइंस कि हमारा लॉजिक क्या होगा और हमारा दिशा और दशा क्या होगी. So these all things I am compiling in my next book, Dialectical Rishi, जिसमें it's a kind of a fiction of two children जो नालंदा में एडमिशन लेना चाहते हैं, बट एडमिशन लेने के लिए जो कोचिंग वो करते हैं, वो कोचिंग किस प्रोसेस से होके जाते हैं सो दैट उनकी एडमिशन वहां पर हो जाए, उसकी एक पूरी गाथा है, जिसमें न्याय दर्शन या लॉजिक सिस्टम पे ज्यादा मैंने बात की है. So this is from my side. बहुत कम समय में I think I have given you many words, but I think इस पे हम कभी डिटेल में भी बात कर सकते हैं. Thank you so much, and if you have any question, you can please ask.
Thank you, thank you, Raviti, for your detailed talk on ancient pedagogy. Your talk indeed was very technical yet very profound. Also, the slides which you used here were heavily loaded with information. You also touched upon the nuances of metaphysics and its essentialism. I totally agree with what you said, that we need to think in a structured way, which is very much the need of the hour. Thank you so much for your value every time. I know you have to rush to some other place as well. So we'll probably have you next time offline here in the college campus. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for patiently listening to all the sessions and being here. It is my privilege to extend a heartfelt word of thanks at the conclusion of this enriching symposium. We are deeply grateful to our distinguished speakers for sharing their valuable insights, which have broadened our perspectives and deepened our understanding of today's theme. Your wisdom and knowledge have truly inspired us. A special thanks to the organizing committee and volunteers for their dedication and seamless coordination, ensuring the success of this event. Our sincere gratitude also goes to participants for their enthusiasm and active engagement, making the symposium a meaningful exchange of ideas. I further extend my heartiest thanks to Honorable Principal Sir for his unwavering support last but not the least, I would like to thank Professor Kusha Tiwari ma'am, who is also a project director in this. I hope this discussion which we had today continue to inspire us and make us move forward in the direction of whatever we have learned so far.